blessings, all my 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 blessings.
NBA Finals Game 3. Kristaps Porzingis ruled out just before the game. Kind of made you think, hey, the Mavs, maybe they'll finally have an opportunity here after Game 2, making it kind of close to pull something over here on the Boston Celtics. That was not the case, though. The C's were 30-5 without their big man, so that has not been a big problem this season, obviously. Luka did have 5 quick points as the Mavs quickly took a 9-2 lead. Mazzulla decided he needed a quick timeout there, but was able to get Luka quickly cooking there for the Dallas Mavericks. Less than 2 minutes into the game as the Celtics recalibrated there. 13-5. Quick balloon there. 18-point lead was the biggest lead of the finals up to that point for the Dallas Mavericks, and it quickly started to flip the other way. Did get a dunk going to Gafford, something that did not happen in the first couple of games, so it started to look a little different in the first quarter there. 18 of 22 points in the paint with no Porzingis to kind of patrol that area. Irving, who was 0 for 8 from 3, finally hit one over Xavier Tillman in transition, and that really got things going for Irving there a little bit. He started to hit some threes. Al Horford challenged him before substitutions, and then Tillman, who looked awful. I just fired a text message off to my brother about how awful Tillman looked before he knocked down that big corner 3 and was able to make a couple good defensive plays on Luka. So he did get adjusted as the game went along, but just an interesting substitution there to bring Tillman in over Cornette, and he sucked initially, but that didn't hurt the Celtics to kind of get him worked in there initially. Too bad. Celtics defense started to kind of take the oxygen away there pretty quickly. It was 31-30 Mavs at the end of the first quarter. Tatum had 13. Luka had 13. So two of the bigger stars started to get going a little bit there. Tatum through the first 2 games was shooting 31.6% for his career at that point, 35.4% in 7 career finals games. I'll get back to those numbers at the end here. So good start for Luka. Of course, by the end of the game there, fouled out. Frustration, a big problem for him. Celtics were 5 for 14 from 3, and the Mavericks 3 for 10. So at least Celtics are getting a couple of looks there. Mavericks, again, not hitting from outside. Sam Hauser hit 2 threes off the bench and started to be pretty productive. Always surprises me how big he is, listed at 6'7" there. Always shocking to see how big he is on the court, I think, but again, Luka, Kyrie, both throwing up a couple air balls in the second quarter. Kind of started to get distraught a little bit. Exum got a bucket going, but you really didn't hear from him again too much the rest of the game. 2 minutes left to go in the second. Celtics had to race the 13-point deficit at that point for their first lead of the game. Peyton Pritchard forced a second air ball from Luka as he started to look pretty stressed out pretty early. Started to not be able to get air under his balls, and started to come up short on shots that would go throughout the rest of the game. Luka was 5 for 7 to start, then 0 for 6 on his next half dozen. Tatum with 18 points with 5 minutes left in the second. That was his highest scoring mark here in Game 3 of the finals, more than he scored in the first 2 games, which was pretty impressive to see him get going there. We did have Irving cooking from outside, hit back-to-back threes. At one point, looked like he'd be a force moving forward. 51-50 Mavericks at the half. Both teams shooting 33% from 3. 4 of them for Kyrie, 4 of 5 from the 3. Tatum and Hauser had 3 threes each, 3 each of the 9 for the Celtics. Tatum 20 total, Hauser 9. 40% team shooting. Was not looking super spectacular there. 20 total for Irving, 17 for Doncic. The rest of the team had 14 points. 11 players total in the mix for the Mavericks as they just tried to get someone else to hit shots. 30 to 16 points in the paint advantage for the Dallas Mavericks, as you could kind of see the no Porzingis effect in there. Coming out of the third, Celtics hit their first 7 shots. They finished 13 for 20 on the quarter, took a big 85 to 70 lead, and that about shut the door on it. 35 to 19 outscored in the third. On the Dallas Mavericks, of course, Brown had 15 points and was really big in it. Now, of course, the fourth quarter was a flip of the switch. So Mavericks obviously made a big rally, got within 3 points. First of all, Celtics pushed it all the way to 21. That was the biggest lead of the game. And it was a 20-2 run over less than 5 minutes there. I think it was a total of 8 minutes that the Celtics only scored 2 points. We see the offense completely die in a vine. They're trying to kind of coast there, a lot of isolation ball, not moving it around enough. And the Mavericks defense has been good. It's been good Mavericks defense. And Boston's offense just kind of dies on a vine. And that's he just can't be doing that, obviously. And as they put this finals under wraps and win a ring here, there'll be a discussion about whether this team's any good or not, and whether this run, the strength of this run. I think sometimes it'll get blended together, and the strength of this team and the strength of the teams they had to beat, I think, are two different conversations, obviously, right? The pathway was not one of the easiest pathways to a finals, to a championship, but I still think this is a very good team. I'm not sure if there's a superstar on this team. I don't believe that. I think superstar by definition has to be a limited pool. I don't think there's one on here. But if you were to list like the top 5 Denver players from last year's team, of last year's players, like if you're matching up 2023 Caldwell Pope and 2023 Michael Porter Jr. against 2024 Porzingis, Drew Holiday, that kind of thing, and you're drafting those 10 starters, the 5 Nuggets from last year, 5 Celtics from this year. If Jokic is a star and going number 1, your number 1 draft selection, then Caldwell Pope, I think, and Michael Porter Jr. are 9-10. So 5 of the 7 next selections after Jokic are these Celtics players, great two-way players. But I'm not sure there's a superstar here. It's an excellent collection of talent here by Brad Stevens, and we see that they were all drafted from picks traded from other teams or acquired from other squads, and how the teams come together, of course. But going back to the game here, of course, the Celtics not being aggressive hurts them because the Mavericks defense is of high quality. Mavericks make a huge run, make things very interesting. Luka fouls out. They did 2 fouls in, I don't even know if it's 5 minutes of real time, and it's maybe a minute and a half of game time. I didn't mark it down exactly. 4:12 left. They do challenge the last foul there, and Luka's expressed since the game, after the game, his frustration with fouls and all that. And we know that there's been a drastic change in how fouls have been called since the All-Star break. A lot fewer whistles, and the playoffs and the finals are all called a little bit differently, allowed to be a little bit more physical. Celtics seem to have taken advantage of that. Mavs did not, and Luka put himself in a vulnerable position many, many times in this game, and should have kept himself in it, and that still doesn't mean they win. And Brian Whitehorse going off on Luka after the game about being selfish and not taking accountability and not being a winner, but a whiner. It was a little bit excessive. We can all see that he puts blame on a lot of different areas. It's more not making adjustments in those aspects and pushing through. Nevertheless, fouls out. They're still down 3 at that point with 4:12 left. The ball really stays in Kyrie's hands for the most part after that, for the next several possessions. And we get down to a 2-point game with 1:20 left. We get a couple Derek Lively dunks, couple big scores there back-to-back. Al Horford came up with a big possession there, but kind of lost the ball, slid out of bounds. So Ball goes back to the Mavericks. Kyrie misses a big 3-point shot over Horford, who goes back to defending him as he did earlier in the game. And Kyrie's had a lot of problems with size, shooting over size, getting his shots off against a lot of these longer bodies, usually in the paint, but he's not able to get it up and over Horford. White comes up with the board, up 4, 22 seconds left. 106-99 ends up the final. So again, Mavericks are on the cusp, but they're not playing with Porzingis. And I'm not sure Luka necessarily makes a difference, but I'm not sure it means a win in the last few minutes here, certainly. Tatum and Brown combined for 61 of the Celtics' 106. White was the third leading scorer with 16. They shot 37% from 3. They hit 17 3-pointers there. Again, 2 points in that 8-minute stretch in the fourth quarter. A lot of iso ball. Really horrible stretch there after a great third quarter. Kyrie and Doncic combined for 62 of the Mavs' 99. They have not hit 100 points yet here in the finals. PJ was the third scorer with 13 points. Lively had 11, 36% from 3 on a much lower volume. 52 points in the paint. Luka was 9 for 18 in the paint. Just had a hard time finishing. Tatum has as well. Luka, again, just looked really tired there towards the end. Frustrated. He was red in the face and just having a tough time here in the finals. Tatum has not been shooting well. He's been turning the ball over a lot. He's been picking up a lot of coverage defensively, taking a lot of bodies, which helps to open up, of course, a lot of his teammates. The lowest shooting percentage is not the worst aspect. It's some of the decisions that he makes when he takes bad shots and doesn't hit them. Not when he takes decent shots and doesn't hit them. That's not the worst thing. That certainly happens. And some of the turnovers, the poor ball handling, some of the horrible dunk attempts, not finishing in the paint, not knowing when to kick out. So he's made some pretty poor decisions. And he's obviously going to be one of the headliners. Right now, Brown and Holiday are going to be two of the favorites to win Finals MVP. But Tatum's still going to be a key part of the narrative. Not too long ago, of course, Brown and Tatum were a key discussion of whether those two can play together or not, which is just ridiculous. I mean, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns are playing together this year. Is that the most effective? Perhaps not. But it presented one of the most difficult defenses to overcome in NBA League history. So it can be mitigated, figured out, some of the spacing aspects and overcoming some of the weaknesses with the strengths, even if they're redundant, and playing to the strengths, forcing them, opponents to play into the strengths of your team on both sides of the ball. And Tatum and Brown don't have that problem. A lot of times it's intangibles, right? Leadership, who gets the last shot, that kind of thing. And right now, if Mavs are double teaming Tatum in the finals, he's kicking the ball out. Or at least he should be. It's not always super effective at identifying that. So at times he is hurting the team, but not necessarily because of the low shooting percentage. It is worth noting on StatMuse here, looking up some of the lowest shooting percentages in NBA Finals history. So through the first 2 games, he was shooting 31.6%. Through 7 career playoff games, it's 37.4%. And that puts him in towards the bottom as far as higher volume players all time. It's brought up his numbers a little bit. 35.9% in this finals, 3 games. 36.4%. So a full percentage point. Adding another game onto his career. Now, some of the lowest percentages in history, Tatum right now is about 13th on this list, I believe, at 36.4%. Now, we have several of the early Celtics. Bob Cousy played 42 NBA playoff finals. Shot 33.7% when that was considered a relatively high percentage. Former teammate of his, Jim Luskroff, actually finished a great Bob Cousy book recently, The Last Pass, covering his career, relationship with Bill Russell, so I recommend that. And a few other role players, starters along the way. As far as this millennium, it's Harrison Barnes, who shot 36.1% in 13 games with the Warriors. And Jason Tatum at 36.4% there. And then the biggest notable names who shot lower percentages than Tatum are Bob Cousy at 33.7%, which was good back in the day. And he just slid to a slightly better percentage with this last game than Patrick Ewing, who shot 36.3%, a tenth of a percent worse now in 2 fewer games. Bruce Bowen, 17 playoff games, 31.8%, the worst on the list with a minimum of 100 NBA final shot attempts. A key role player, of course. John Starks, a little bit better than Tatum, 36.8% in 7 NBA finals. Again, a different time. But that's going to be a talking point as well, his terrible shooting performance. Luka, on the other hand, it's going to be a lot about his attitude, about how he wasn't able to fight through fouls, really elevate his team. But that's not the key point of why the Mavs aren't succeeding. I think the West was still very strong. I think there are actually like 5 very good teams, right? The Mavs finished as the 4 seed overall in record. But the Mavs, Thunder, Nuggets, Timberwolves all had their strengths and their weaknesses. And the Celtics were just the better overall roster. Even though a lot of those teams in the West have what you could say is a superstar, a higher level player. But they still need to find something that works better around Luka Doncic to really push through what was a quality roster here in the Celtics. It's a different mindset to build a quality team that can make the playoffs, a team that can make a run through the playoffs, and a team that can win a championship. A team that can not only make the finals, but then beat a high-quality team that's the best of the 15 from the other division once you get there. I think that's a whole different mountain to climb. We've unfortunately lost 2 great basketball minds and 2 great human beings within the past week here. Both Bill Walton and, of course, the logo Jerry West. Bill Walton, I remember just from watching broadcasts with my dad, who really couldn't stand Bill Walton's lunacy at times, from wandering off a broadcast set to sitting in the crowd to spending a lot of time on a broadcast talking about just all kinds of shenanigans besides a basketball game. But very much a character and someone who was a very unique personality and by all accounts, just a phenomenal human being from his time here. A protester back when he was with the UCLA Bruins, where he was 3-time Player of the Year in the 70s under John Wooden. Won the 72-73 championship, part of those teams, in the 88-game win streak, the longest of all time. He led the 77 championship team Portland Trailblazers after he was the number 1 overall pick in 74. He won the MVP in 78. Only played 10 seasons professionally and only logged about 3 seasons, I believe, where he was able to play 50-plus games because injuries just tore him apart. Ankles, back. So he started his broadcast career and, of course, was able to touch a lot more folks that way through his voice and support and his awesome personality, which is how most folks, of course, know him. He was a deadhead. He was a bit of a rebel. He very much was for love and peace and harmony. and supported basketball players and folks in all walks of life trying to find themselves, and was just a phenomenal guy. Didn't know he was sick, and was just very surprising to see him go. The icon, the legend, who has been a thread throughout the NBA for a very long time. I just recently started the book covering the Portland Trailblazers season where Bill Walton was banged up. Breaks of the Game by David Halberstam, who's also passed, unfortunately, great author. And after I finished that up, discussing a season where Bill Walton was banged up after they'd won the championship there under Bill Walton's initial reign there in Portland, I'll be tackling Jerry West's book, his biography. Came out a few years back, West by West, I believe it's called. And he lived a very difficult early life, abusive childhood, had 5 siblings, I believe, one that passed, and he struggled with some health or developmental issues physically, I believe, to begin his life there. And as a result, he was a little aggressive, according to accounts, at least initially in his life. His first marriage was a little rocky, and he had some difficulties throughout his life, and had a rough portrayal in the Lakers season, Lakers show on HBO that ran for a couple seasons that was unfortunately canceled. But it was part of the Los Angeles Lakers when he eventually made it into the NBA. Successful player, 14-time All-Star every single year he played. Was unfortunately the culprit of Bill Russell's ring getting, I should say. Bill Russell bagged several of his rings off of him. NBA was much smaller then. I think some years there were as few as like 8 teams in the league, and kind of grew and shrunk for a little bit there while he was around in the, what was that, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 60s through 70s, and but he has had a difficult time beating the Boston Celtics, and he's the only MVP so far to win, only Finals MVP to win on the losing team so far. He did eventually get a ring, but that Finals MVP, tough dig there. But he finally won a championship in 72 after winning the Finals MVP in 69. Again, 14-time All-Star, 10-time first team All-NBA, plethora of awards. And eventually, as he got out of that role, he's still been involved in the NBA through the past 50 years after that. 8-time winner as an executive, was involved in the Lakers office, famously had kind of a falling out there with the Buss family, which has some notorious, issues of their own. So not surprising that there may be a falling out and differences there. But had a hand in a number of different franchises and championship teams throughout the year, including most recently the Warriors championship runs and the Clippers as well, most recently. He also had a hand in the Memphis Grizzlies in the early 2000s with Paul Gasol when they were an effective team briefly there before Paul Gasol moved on to the Lakers. And one of the most famous moves was getting both Shaq and drafting Kobe pretty quickly there within a week of each other onto the same team. And just the hands he's had within the DNA of the NBA as an entire league throughout its entire history is just really, really incredible. And both him and Bill Walton revisiting not only their Wikipedias, but some of the background pieces and coverage on both of them in their playing careers. Even though Bill Walton's was fairly brief, how successful he was in college, and of course Jerry West and how successful he was are just incredible. Bill Walton won an Emmy, multiple times won announcer awards. We forget how many appearances he's made in videos throughout the years, a lot of them in the 90s in movies, and just how involved Jerry West was in his 80s in the NBA. And of course, Walton as a personality, more front-facing for fans, of course, announcing the Pac-12. So it's very unfortunate to lose two big figureheads in the basketball world that very much still supported the sport and the evolution. Basketball doesn't always get that nowadays. It's gone through as much evolution as any other sport, I think more so than football even. It just turned, of course, to a more passing game, and more so than hockey as far as I know, and baseball. But two great supporters of the game, two great human beings, and with great reach. And it's just terribly unfortunate to lose just two iconic human beings. Game 4 is Friday, so we may have a new champion by the time we hit the weekend here. Not really sure what to expect. I think all teams like to really win at home in front of their fans, head out and party after that, and then plan the parade for later in the week. That would be my guess, but quite frankly, Celtics, even though some of these games get a little frisky towards the end, they might just beat the brakes off the Mavericks. They look kind of defeated. They look kind of, outside of Kyrie and at times and Luka throughout the whole thing, no one's really shown up. So, Porzingis or not, they might just box in the Mavericks unless they completely fall apart. So, I would expect to have this wrapped up by the weekend. So, enjoy the game. I'll chat with you later, and we'll start looking ahead to football season. All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Talk to you later. Bye.
All my blessings, 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 all my blessings. I need my blessings every penny, daily counting every single one. I'm seeing plenty. Level up and watch that beat turn into